If you've ever gone through weeks of barely eating, only to step on the scale and see almost no change, then you already know something about the usual weight loss advice doesn't add up. For years, you've probably heard the same simple formula: eat less, move more. But for a lot of people, that idea just doesn't deliver real results. You cut calories, you feel drained, you start losing muscle, and yet the stubborn fat, especially around the belly, just doesn't go away. The real issue isn't just about calories, it's about how your body decides to store and release energy. In other words, it's a storage problem, not a math problem. And at the center of this system is a hormone called insulin. Insulin acts like the master control switch for your metabolism. It decides whether your body is burning fuel or holding on to it. When insulin levels stay high, your body essentially locks access to stored fat. So no matter how little you eat or how much exercise you do, if insulin is constantly elevated, your body stays in storage mode. Fat cells remain sealed off, and the body refuses to tap into them. To actually burn fat, especially the harmful visceral fat that builds up around your organs, you need to flip that metabolic switch. You have to shift your body from storage mode into usage mode. And this doesn't happen just by eating fewer calories. The real key is bringing your baseline insulin levels down consistently. Today, we're breaking down what that actually means. Not just surface level advice like cut carbs, but the deeper biological systems that control how your body manages fuel. Things like how glycogen stores get depleted, how certain foods can create an acetic acid effect that improves metabolism, how viscous fiber can act like a protective barrier for blood sugar spikes, and how the balance between insulin and glucagon determines whether you store fat or burn it. This isn't just another diet approach, it's more like metabolic engineering. Instead of focusing only on weight as the symptom, here at Wellness Science Hub, the focus is on the root cause, the hormonal signals driving everything in the first place. When you understand those signals, you can start changing how your body actually behaves. To really understand why insulin tends to stay elevated, you first need to understand how your body prioritizes fuel. Think of it as having two main energy tanks. The first tank is small and easy to access. This is glycogen, the stored sugar in your liver and muscles. The second tank is much larger but harder to unlock. This is your body fat. And your body follows a very strict rule. As long as that first tank is full, it will almost never tap into the second one. On top of that, insulin stays active to keep energy stored safely away instead of being used. In today's world, we rarely give our bodies a break from fueling. We eat soon after waking up, snack throughout the day, and often continue eating late into the night. That means the liver almost never gets a chance to fully empty. Because of that, insulin rarely drops low enough to trigger fat burning, so the body stays stuck in a constant storage cycle. The fastest way to change this isn't simply cutting sugar or eating less overall. It's about strategically and mechanically depleting stored fuel in the liver so the body is forced to switch energy systems. This leads us into the first phase, the mechanical drain. And this isn't about extreme endurance training or running yourself into exhaustion. We are specifically talking about targeting liver glycogen, and this detail changes everything once you understand it properly. Human energy storage isn't just one uniform system. There's an important difference between where and how your body stores fuel. Muscle glycogen behaves in a very self-contained way. Whatever glucose your muscles store stays locked inside that specific muscle. It can only be used locally during activity in that area, and it cannot be released back into the bloodstream to support the rest of the body, like your brain. The liver works completely differently. Liver glycogen is the body's shared energy reserve. It exists to stabilize blood sugar for the entire system. When blood glucose drops, the liver releases stored glycogen to keep everything running smoothly. Now think about what happens in the morning. After a full night of sleep, your insulin is naturally at one of its lowest points. Your liver has already used a portion of its glycogen overnight just to keep you alive, but it is still partially filled. If you eat immediately after waking, especially a carb-heavy breakfast, you quickly refill that liver storage. Insulin rises, and the metabolic fat-burning access stays locked. The body simply continues in storage mode. But if you delay eating and instead introduce movement, you create a very different response. You begin forcing the body to use that remaining liver glycogen. This is where a key biological mechanism comes into play involving a transporter called GLUT4. Under normal conditions, glucose enters cells mainly when insulin signals it to open the door. But during muscle contraction, GLUT4 moves to the surface of muscle cells independently of insulin. In simple terms, movement itself becomes a glucose sink. It pulls sugar out of the bloodstream without requiring insulin to rise. As blood glucose levels drop, the liver is forced to compensate by releasing more stored glycogen. This means you are actively draining the liver's energy reserves without triggering a strong insulin response. You are reducing fuel availability in circulation while keeping insulin relatively low. The practical application is straightforward. After waking up, instead of eating immediately, you hydrate with water and electrolytes and then start moving. This can be a 20 to 30-minute walk, light resistance training, or zone 2 cardio. Doing this in a fasted state helps clear out remaining glycogen stores. Once that buffer is reduced, the body is pushed toward a lower insulin baseline and begins shifting more toward fat oxidation for energy. In simple terms, you are encouraging the body to transition from sugar dependence to fat utilization more efficiently. This brings us to phase 2, the chemical break. At this point, the focus shifts from emptying stored fuel to controlling how food impacts insulin response when you eat again. The goal is not to avoid eating, but to prevent sharp insulin spikes while still nourishing the body. One simple but powerful tool for this is vinegar, specifically the acetic acid it contains. Research has shown that consuming about 1 to 2 tablespoons of vinegar before a meal can significantly improve insulin sensitivity. It works through multiple mechanisms. First, it slows carbohydrate digestion by inhibiting an enzyme called alpha amylase. This enzyme normally breaks starch into simple sugars. When its activity is reduced, glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually instead of flooding it all at once. This gives the pancreas a more controlled workload instead of a sudden spike. Second, acetic acid helps increase glucose uptake into skeletal muscle. Instead of excess glucose being stored, more of it is directed toward muscle tissue where it can be used as energy. It also supports metabolic pathways that favor fat oxidation over storage. In simple terms, this becomes a way to smooth out digestion and reduce the stress placed on your insulin response. A practical approach is mixing 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar into a large glass of water and drinking it about 5 to 10 minutes before your largest meal of the day. Next comes phase 3, the viscous shield. Most people think of fiber only in terms of digestion, but certain types of fiber have a direct impact on blood sugar and insulin response. We are specifically referring to viscous soluble fibers such as psyllium husk, glucomannan, chia seeds, and flax seeds. When mixed with water, these fibers form a thick gel-like substance. When consumed before or during a meal, this gel forms a physical barrier inside the small intestine. It slows down how quickly carbohydrates are broken down and absorbed. Instead of sugar rapidly entering the bloodstream, it is released gradually over time. You can think of it like placing a filter over a drain. The flow still happens, but it is controlled and steady rather than sudden and overwhelming. This slower absorption helps prevent sharp post-meal glucose spikes, which in turn reduces excessive insulin release. Clinical research, including findings published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, has shown that high-viscosity fibers can significantly reduce post-meal blood sugar peaks. In practical terms, this means you are not just what you eat, but also how quickly your body is forced to process it. And by controlling that speed, you directly influence your insulin response and overall metabolic state. And when glucose levels don't spike sharply, insulin doesn't spike sharply either. But the real impact of fiber goes much deeper than just stabilizing blood sugar. Once this fiber reaches the lower part of the intestine, it becomes food for your gut microbiome. The bacteria in your gut ferment it and produce short-chain fatty acids, especially butyrate and propionate. These compounds are far more important than most people realize. They send powerful signals in the body that trigger the release of hormones like GLP-1 and PYY. These are satiety hormones that communicate directly with your brain, telling it that you are full and no longer need more food. At the same time, they also interact with the pancreas to help regulate insulin release in a more balanced way. So what this really means is that fiber is not just slowing digestion, it is activating a full hormonal feedback system that influences appetite, insulin behavior, and fat storage signals. In a sense, your body starts receiving the message that it is safe to stop overstoring energy. A simple way to use this is by always starting your meals with fiber. This could be a salad, fibrous vegetables, or even a psyllium husk drink before carbohydrates. This creates a kind of buffer layer that reduces the intensity of the insulin response that follows. Now we move into phase 4, the frequency reset. This is where most people unknowingly make things worse: constant eating. Every time you eat something, even something small or healthy, you trigger an insulin response. So if your day looks like breakfast at 8 a.m., a snack at 10, lunch at 1, another snack at 4, and dinner at 7, your insulin never truly settles back to its baseline. Instead, your body stays in a prolonged storage state for most of the day. The fat-burning system never fully activates because the signal to store energy keeps getting repeated over and over. To reverse this, you need to reduce eating frequency and compress your eating window. This is the foundation of time-restricted eating. But the real key is not just the window itself, it is the quiet time between meals. There is a critical relationship between insulin and glucagon. Think of them as two opposite forces on a metabolic seesaw. Insulin pushes the body towards storage. Glucagon pushes the body toward releasing stored energy. Both cannot dominate at the same time. When you snack frequently, insulin remains elevated and glucagon stays suppressed. That means your body never gets permission to access stored fat. It is constantly told to hold on instead of release. There is also another important process that only happens when you leave enough time between meals, at least around 4 hours, without food. This is called the migrating motor complex, MMC. It is a cleansing wave in the digestive system that clears out leftover food particles and bacteria from the gut. But this system only activates when insulin is low and the body is not actively digesting. Every time you snack, you interrupt it. You shut down the cleaning cycle, raise insulin again, and reinforce fat storage signals. That's why one of the fastest ways to bring insulin back to a healthy baseline is to stop constant snacking. Instead, focus on 2 or 3 proper nutrient-dense meals a day. Eat until you are satisfied, then allow your body to rest between meals without continuous feeding. The reason this approach works so effectively is because it doesn't just manage calories, it changes hormonal behavior. Unlike chronic calorie restriction, which can slow down metabolism over time by affecting thyroid output, lowering insulin actually improves access to stored body fat. When insulin drops, enzymes like lipoprotein lipase, which promote fat storage, become less active. At the same time, hormone-sensitive lipase, which helps break down stored fat, becomes more active. In simple terms, your body shifts from storing energy to using it. At that point, you are no longer fighting your biology. It is like releasing the handbrake on a car. You stop forcing progress and let the system move the way it is designed to. When you combine these strategies, fasted movement to empty glycogen, vinegar and fiber to reduce spikes, and structured meal timing to allow insulin to reset, you are no longer struggling against your body. You are working with it. Fat loss then stops feeling like a constant battle and starts becoming a natural outcome of a more balanced metabolism. Your body is already built to stay lean and efficient. It just needs the right signals. Reduce the constant insulin spikes, give your system space to reset, and over time, visceral fat begins to decrease naturally. And that's where things start to change.